This is the pièce de résistance, and obviously it comes last, otherwise it wouldn't be that. This is the toughest presentation. It's also going to be the longest, so I'll do my best to not run over time. Okay, so let me start with what is an academic paper. This is a working definition that I wrote a few years ago. It basically is, what are we expected to do? An academic paper is expected to present a methodologically governed, coherently argued and evidence-based answer to a relevant and clearly formulated research question that derives from a practical or theoretical problem. I've highlighted the two terms that I'd like to talk about in more detail in the time I have, namely coherently argued and evidence-based, because they are central to academic argumentation. So you're writing a paper, well, I'm writing a paper, and you'd like me to argue, right? Because it's something that we do in science. The thing is, though, but how do we argue? And it helps, again, this is the linguist in me, to go back to, well, what does the word mean? Because, of course, in English at least, to argue has two meanings. You can argue with a friend over which pizza to order from Dietschy's after tonight's science slams. That, of course, is the everyday sense. In other words, you exchange opinions, sometimes even heatedly, animatedly. In a narrower sense, to argue from Latin arguere means to prove or to demonstrate, and that already brings us a bit closer to what we do in science. So that an argument, as one of two nouns, is a research argument is a set of observable reasons and evidence that I use to substantiate a claim. Now here you already have the three key elements of a research argument, which are reasons, evidence and claim, and at the moment they are in the reverse order in which they appear in a standard argument. Now, going back to my title, argumentation. Well, what is academic argumentation? It's the process of forming reasons, providing evidence, drawing conclusions from that evidence, and applying those conclusions to a case under discussion. And what I might have said at the beginning, well, actually, this is an exercise in critical thinking. Academic argumentation is about going into a particular mindset where I say, well, okay, now what convinces the skeptics? Because arguing is about persuading those who are hard to persuade, who are not easily convinced, who want more than opinion, who want more than reasons. So I need to understand, well, okay, what convinces researchers most, including your supervisors? Well, evidence. What is evidence? Simply put, observable, verifiable facts. What does that mean? That means that the facts that I present can be tested. They can be replicated. This is probably clearer to people in the hard sciences or the natural sciences, where they say an experiment is only valid if it can be replicated in any other laboratory in the world, because it is methodologically governed, which is what I said before, because it's coherently argued, and because it provides an evidence-based answer to the problem that I have posed. Evidence, that's a key term. I've put it in green because I'm going to use three colours to take you through the main steps of an academic argument. Now, an academic argument essentially has 5 elements, and each comes with a guiding question. A claim. What do you want me to believe? I want you to believe that tonight's science slams were a great idea. That's only a claim. Well, why should we agree? Well, because they were both interesting. They came from different perspectives. We covered the essentials of academic writing, of doing research. And you would say, well, okay, in an everyday conversation at your home, we would say, okay, you've given us a couple of reasons to believe you, But in a research context, well, how do you know? In other words, we want some kind of metrics, whether empirical or theoretical. We want some kind of hard and fast facts and figures. The elements 4 and 5 are perhaps less prominent, but then nevertheless they're worth mentioning. Well, it could be that that you would disagree with me in that you would say, well, okay, I get the fact that you're supporting this particular claim with this particular evidence, with these particular facts, but have you thought about the other evidence? And I would say, well, of course I've thought about it, and if I think about it, here is what I would claim, and then you would say, okay, that's your next claim, it's something that you want us to believe. Why should we agree? And we go back into the same cycle of argumentation. Sometimes, and this happens particularly in cross-cultural situations, or let's say with heated topics, like, for example, I was asking a group of students last week what they consider to be controversial topics, and a young lady said abortion, quite rightly so. Imagine doing research on abortion, which is a heavily contested fact of life. So it could be that you've presented an argument, and nevertheless your readers would say, well, what actually is your underlying logic? What are your world beliefs? Isn't your argument driven more by your world beliefs, by your values, than by actual research? Okay. But for the moment, we can just stay with our claim, our reasons, and our evidence. So the formula is, and this is how to test an academic argument, there must be a claim, which must be substantiated by reasons, which must be based on evidence. A claim basically is an assertion, a statement that needs to be supported, that demands support. A reason is a statement that supports a claim, but that only holds water in a research context if it's supported by evidence. So that I've made up this example. It will be the abstract of my assessment year paper if I were writing one. This paper claims, you can see I'm staying with the colours. This paper claims that DH's is the best pizza delivery service in St.Gallen because they have the best value for money, fastest delivery times and friendliest staff. Okay. So if we're having dinner and we want to watch the World Cup final together with Christian Schlumpf on Saturday evening, we would say, okay, no more research, but on Monday morning when we meet again, we might say, well, what's the evidence? In evidence, this is my paper again, it cites a representative customer survey and blind tasting conducted in 2020 by the University of St. Gallen's Institute for Customer Insight. It finds that. I present my results, okay, which is one of the 3 things that I need to do in my abstract. So, that's my example. Now, there are several things we need to do to strengthen our argument. The first thing is we need to support claims with reasons, because we want to persuade readers to accept our claim, but because our readers are sceptical people, we have to connect those reasons to claims, usually with the word because. Because and based on are the 2 key words in an academic argument. So, here's an example that I'm going to run through several steps. It comes from the book that I mentioned in my talk on writing strategies, the Booth book on the craft of research. It goes like this. First step, elementary schools should make teaching foreign languages a priority. I sound like a politician, don't I? Because we acquire languages best and most easily when we are young. I still sound like a politician because I haven't provided any evidence, but I still want you to believe something. So, research arguments are complex arguments, which is we usually need more than one reason to support a claim, because otherwise our readers will say, what? You've only got one reason? Why should I believe you? That's not strong enough. And also because reasons themselves demand further support. Okay, you're giving me 3 reasons why DH's is the best pizza delivery service in town, but unless you can prove it, the reasons are worth nothing. So, step 2. Elementary schools should make teaching foreign languages a priority. Still the same claim. Because we acquire languages most easily when we are young. That's my first reason, and in argumentative theory, that's what we call a supporting claim. It's another claim, but of course it appears to be a reason. It is a reason. Those who begin second languages as adults rarely attain the level of fluency of those who learn them as children. It's a second reason. Still no evidence. Teaching foreign languages at elementary school also contributes to children's ethical development. Yes, of course. Third reason, but still only a supporting claim. Because it fosters an awareness of cultures and societies beyond their own. This sounds like a government white paper. This sounds like a politician, you know. This sounds like your education minister. Still no evidence. So, we need to base our reasons, so the blue parts of our argument in the colour scheme, on evidence. And that means on verifiable data, on verifiable facts, on verifiable concepts, models, theories, etc., and on verifiable research, blind, peer-reviewed research, which my colleagues before have been talking about. Verifiable means testable, confirmable, and observable, right? So, now, the same argument. I've now using only 2 of those 4 reasons I used before. And now the difference is, down here, after my second reason, and you'll notice now the research mindset being switched on in a study of over 100 second language learners, Jones 2013 identified an inverse correlation between second language proficiency and another factor. See table 1. So seeing is believing, as we all know. I can go and look at the table. I can go and read Jones 2013. So what I have here is evidence, and that in argumentative theory is called a supporting reason. Okay, so I've taken it a huge step further. Now it could be that our readers say, well, okay, so you've got one study, Jones 2013. You're writing your paper or your thesis in 2023. 10 years have passed since. What has happened in those 10 years? Did research stop in 2013, or what has happened? You need to report the most recent and the most relevant research, okay? So that means one of the things you need to do, one of the ways in which we can strengthen our argument, is by acknowledging and responding to other positions. And that's a bit of a construct, because I have to imagine 2 things. First of all, my paper's going to be read by a real human being who's waiting for, because it's a research paper, an argument, which, as we now know, should actually have those 3 steps. So one of the things we need to do is we need to anticipate as many of our readers' questions and objections as possible. So basically, if I make this claim, support it with these reasons, and support it with that evidence, are my readers really going to be persuaded? Or does the little devil on my shoulder, sitting on my shoulder, say, hold on a moment, they're going to object. They're going to say, Jones 2013, okay, I've read that study, it has these and these limitations. Have you considered those limitations? So the technique is to anticipate as many of those questions and objections, and to respond to the most important ones. That I make those part of my own argument. In other words, I steal my audience's, my readers' thunder, as we say in English. So this could go like this. This is the step 4 in my example. Same claim. I've now basically just taken one reason, and now, just for the sake of illustration, I've factored in an acknowledgement, because I anticipate a reader saying, well, what if we prioritise foreign languages, what other subjects, basically, what's going to happen to mathematics? What's going to happen to the natural sciences? So I write, of course, if schools increase the attention they give to foreign languages, the quality of instruction in other subjects might decline. I acknowledge the fact that the reader might object to the prioritizing of foreign languages. Okay. Then I say, okay, my response is, but little evidence exists to support that fear, and much dispels it. It's a response, but again, as you can see, I just have two claims, no more. So I basically have to go back into, why am I saying this? What evidence supports this? So one of the things that happens, and it happens very easily, is that we get vague. We start using vague language. Here's another example. American higher education must curb escalating tuition costs. That's the claim. I sound like a politician. Because the price of college is preventing many people from realizing the American dream. It's a reason. Today, a majority of students leave college with a crushing debt evidence. I think, I've given you evidence. The evidence is a majority of students leave college with a crushing debt burden. But my reader's going to say, well, I don't understand. How many people are many? If you say a majority of students, you mean 51% or 86%? If you say a crushing debt burden, unless you quantify in dollars, that doesn't mean anything. So my reader, and I haven't anticipated this reader's objection, says, you're generalizing. That's the worst thing that can happen. You have an argument, but someone says, you're generalizing. Many people. I don't know what that means. Or you provide no hard facts and figures to support a majority of students. Because there's no percentage. I don't know what the point is. So what? A crushing debt burden. Unless you put that into dollars, I can't believe you. So the revised argument, again the same claim, with the same reason, but now two pieces of evidence. In 2013, nearly 70% of students borrowed money for college with loans averaging $30,000. Miller 2015, that's my first piece of evidence. Now, of course, I'm getting into my real research mode and think, okay, I've provided one piece of evidence, that's not going to be convincing enough, so I provide a second piece of evidence. Further evidence shows that this level of debt prevents many graduates from buying a home, starting a family, or pursuing a higher degree. Jones 2016. And that's when my critical reader starts believing me. So, we must, and I'm nearly there, we must evaluate our evidence. In other words, which evidence do our readers expect, so that if they do object to our argument, we've already anticipated their objections. We need to test the reliability of our evidence, right? This is where I would say, I would issue a huge warning about secondary sources. Okay, always rely on primary sources. Don't rely on secondary sources which report original content. And unless you look at the primary source, you will never know whether the secondary source has reported the data you're using accurately and completely. So 3 questions to test and evaluate my evidence. Is my evidence representative and relevant to what I'm doing? Is it from a reliable, authoritative, blind peer-reviewed source? And is it reported accurately in that source? You can see it's nice, isn't it, that all those words begin with the word "are." So, questions. Many people have a lot of How many people? Many people have a lot of questions about argumentation. So you can ask your tutor or, of course, us at the Writing Lab. Thank you so much.